From the Maps team at Meta. Happy Geography Awareness Week. This is a week I've been celebrating for, I don't know, a number of years now. It's always a fun time to get out and about and do things different as a geographer that you wouldn't normally do on a on your normal, weekly, daily basis. I'm joined with a couple of my colleagues here, Brian Housel and Chris, and Marcy, who's helping in the background there. And yeah, we just wanted to give everyone an update on the work that we've been doing, and our walkabout program and the focus on improving pedestrian data. So with that, I think I'll just jump right into the presentation here. Everyone can see my screen. A little bit more about myself. I'm Chad. I'm a geographer. I work on the Maps team at Meta. I'm based just outside of DC in Virginia, across the river. Done a lot of work through the years, working for various government agencies and industries. And, DC is a very mappy place to be. There's a strong community here, and I'm part of it. So if you're ever in DC doing for any kind of event, definitely look me up. I'm also co-founder of Youth Mappers, which you may have heard of. It's an organization focused on promoting OpenStreetMap and open data amongst universities. I'm currently chair of the OpenStreetMap US Pedestrian Working Group, and I'm the former chairman of the Hot OSM membership. My favorite map editor is Rapid. That's kind of a new, that's changed over the years, but within the last year, it's definitely been Rapid. Street Complete is my favorite mobile editor, and OSM. And if I'm using, raw OSM data in the field, that's the one that I've been using for a long time. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to my colleague Chris for an introduction.
Yeah, I'm Chris. I'm a map data analyst chair on the Maps team at Meta. I work with all things that are data with a location, like Mapillary, and a lot of things in between, 3D, 2D. I live in Switzerland. I'm from the USA. I like to edit OpenStreetMap in both places and around the world. As a Mapillary user before I joined the Mapillary team, that's about 8 or 9 years ago now. And I also work with the Overture Maps Foundation on the developer advocacy team, so helping to plan for the different tools to use the data or integrate into apps. And yeah, I got Rapid. It was my favorite web-based editor. Definitely love Street Complete on mobile, and I put the Swiss Topo app as my favorite otherwise Maps app.
Nice. Thanks, Chris and Brian.
Hi. Yeah. I'm a software developer. Currently I'm the main developer of Rapid. I live and map in New Jersey in the United States. I'm the maintainer of various open source things. I've served on the OSM US board. I've been around this community for about, I guess, 12 years now. I really got into this as a runner and hiker, just as doing these outdoors activities. I would go run these like races in the woods or, whatever, and I'd want the map to be as good as it could be. That's kind of my origin story of what got me into OSM. Uh, and it says that my favorite apps are obviously Rapid. I'm biased. It's my baby. But also, I've done a bunch of work with Mapillary. I love Mapillary. A while ago, I made a blog about how to stick cameras on cars and drive around with them. So, and Strava is kind of what really got me into it. And just every day, I'm looking on there and just seeing where my runs are.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, there's a couple of my favorite Mapillary and Strava. Those are some great apps too that I regularly use. All right, so we're just going to quickly walk through this. Chris will give a brief intro on Maps at Meta, just a very general high-level overview. I'll talk about some of the work we're doing specifically with pedestrian data. Brian's going to demo some of the latest and greatest features of Rapid and MapRoulette. Then we'll get to map, and I'll give a brief, 5-minute overview and introduction of, how the tools work and how people like to see the data, and then, you can choose a project and start mapping. So with that, Chris.
All right, so really quick, we'll go over what we do with maps at Meta, why it's important to us, how we build them. So from a very high level, Meta uses open data. That's the primary source that we go to for maps. And we build our own maps. We build our own maps from a design perspective, from a data perspective, and we don't build them entirely from scratch on our own. Instead, it's really important to work with partners. So that's like OpenStreetMap. That's other companies who also have open map data. That's whole groups of communities, whether that's people editing Facebook, contributing to Mapillary, and so on. So here are some familiar logos. You've got Facebook, Facebook Messenger, Instagram, WhatsApp. You got, is that Workplace and Oculus over there on the right. So these are some, not all, of the different apps that Meta produces. And what's really important about all of these, the next slide, is all of these use maps in some way. And a lot of people see these apps. So you have, I think we have 3.3 billion and probably a little more now on all of the apps in general. There's people connected to the internet all over the world. So 3 billion of them are using Facebook, 2 billion are using Instagram, 2.8 on WhatsApp. All of these are the main app that people are using for many hours of the day, sometimes other stuff too. And you often need a location reference. It's something small. Maybe you're not navigating or searching for restaurants, but just looking at something for sale on Facebook Marketplace or seeing where your friend tagged a location on Instagram. Not even on the map itself, but just that text that says it was at a specific park. So all of this is spatial. It needs some degree of spatial, even if it's small. So that's why, in part, maps are really important in Meta. You can see the maps appear in a variety of surfaces. You might already have seen some of these on different websites. Some you may want to go look for. My favorite that's coming up more and more is on Instagram, and the WhatsApp business directory is also really interesting. But definitely there's an increasing spatial mindset here. So we're taking an ever closer look at how to make maps usable and make them high quality for people. There's also a long-term future planning that involves map data, and that's augmented reality. So augmented reality, even when you're in small indoor spaces like this, but also when you just zoom out in general, it's inherently spatial. Location is really, really, really important. It's not just about things like emojis floating in space or putting 3D shapes out into a scene, but also about just knowing where restaurants are, where public services are, where you can walk, where you can cross the street, what the categories are of many things. So that's also a huge reason that map data is very important to the future of Meta and future products that potentially billions of people might use. So the map building process at Meta consists of really drawing from a lot of sources and serving to a lot of audiences. It can feel a little bit simple. We can explain it in basically saying we find all the best open data that's out there and put it all together and then display it in a nice looking way. But it's a lot more complex than that. One of the main sources is OpenStreetMap, and OpenStreetMap is excellent. Really, like a big part of our team are also just contributors to OpenStreetMap, just in our hometowns, in the places we live and work. We know about the quality, we know about the lack of quality in some places, we help improve it, but definitely there's that focus on how can we make OpenStreetMap more excellent. And that involves getting more people to edit it, growing the community, just having more people having their eyes on the map and contributing. So our general pipeline is really reliant on OpenStreetMap as well as Mapillary as these communities. And we pipe this data in. We want to get as much good data into OpenStreetMap as possible. Then you have Overture maps, which is a great way to repackage and reformat data. And a huge chunk of that is OpenStreetMap. And through Overture and with design, cartography put on top, eventually you get maps in all these different apps and devices that we provide. And on this next slide, this is the way more complicated version of the ecosystem. So if you're interested, I'd say take a screenshot. There's a lot of cool stuff, awesome tools in here, interesting processes to look up. We won't go and dig into all of them. But we're going to focus in this webinar on some of the really important ones that are more on the top right side of the screen here. So in general, just know that there's a lot of data that comes in, a lot of people that help find what's the best data, get rid of things that conflict, mash it all together and make it look nice. Like that is the work that we're doing on Maps at Meta, and it comes from all different angles. So me personally, I work a lot on making sidewalk data. You have Mapillary all over the world. On the left, you can see where we can start to predict where sidewalks exist and crosswalks exist alongside the road. And that work has been really cool for the past little more over a year now to be something we've all gathered around and rallied on to improve OpenStreetMap with and get more imagery, get more community efforts going. So we're going to talk more about that today.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, well, map making is a very complicated and time-consuming and energy-consuming industry, as most of us know. And so I'm just going to spend a few minutes to talk about pedestrian data, why it's important, and how we're helping improve that across the US and world. So major cities lack good pedestrian data, and that is a true statement for most large cities across the world. You know, there's a couple big cities in the US. I'm going to give Philly a shout out. They have some really good openly available pedestrian data, but a lot of major cities don't. The data on their open website is out of date. It's incomplete. It's not there. Maybe it doesn't have crosswalks. There's a lot of variables that go into it. And many places you'll find that OpenStreetMap has better data than authoritative sources. But if you know of any really good open data sources for sidewalks, I would be interested. You could just throw them right there in the chat. I'd love to review them. And, you know, this last year, I'm working on a bigger analysis right now, but I can confidently say that pedestrian data is increasing in OpenStreetMap. There's way more created this year than last year. If you just take the top 10 cities in the US alone, there's been almost 8,000 miles of sidewalks created past year. You know, that'll take you like from one side to the US back and then almost back again. That's a lot of sidewalk data. You got to think like the longest sidewalk might be what, quarter mile long, mile long before it's broken up by one of the 7,500 crossings that are in there. So there's a lot of that data too. Here's a list of the cities where most of that data is being created. I know I say top 10 cities and there's 11 there. That's because one city has more crosswalk data than sidewalk data. But either way, there's a lot of it happening. We've looked at it in detail. And we found that there are some inconsistencies with the way that these data are being created. It's just like anything, everyone has a different perspective of how things should look. And so one of the projects that I started earlier this year to help increase the consistency of how data are generated is the Pedestrian Working Group through OpenStreetMap US. Called a friend of mine, Maggie Colley, and was like, hey, Maggie, you know, there's a lot of big movement happening here in the OSM community, and you guys are a great convener of people and resources. So we launched this pedestrian working group on March 5th, and now here we are in November. What is our 8th or 9th meeting is later today, and we have I think our major accomplishment so far is coming up with this tiered schema that can help meet people in places where they're at with generating pedestrian data. I think the one thing that everyone agrees on is they want a routable data set. They want to be able to go from point A to point B using only pedestrian data. And then, the granularity of that increases. You can route from point A to point B, only tagging roadways. But then you start adding sidewalks, crosswalks, curbs, adding a bunch of tags to those. And then you can ultimately end up down here with the platinum data set. It's similar to some of the work that the Tasker Center is doing at University of Washington. If anyone's on the call, give you a shout out. It's really great work. They're integrating slope, multimodal transportation. And I think that's like ultimately where we want to get. It takes a lot of work to get there, but it's a step-by-step approach. So our Walkabout program is a project that we started. It's an initiative we started a year ago. In Brooklyn, in DC, were the first two cities where we walked or where we mapped. And so we were working with OSM community members. In Brooklyn, it's an extremely dense city. We mapped almost 1,300 kilometers of sidewalks, DC and Miami. We've since completed dozens and dozens of these projects across the US and world. There's a list of those projects here. If you go to the OSM wiki, organized editing activities, meta pedestrian data, you can find active projects and you can see which ones we've accomplished. Finished. And with that, tooling and data creation is a big part of it. And I want to hand it over to Brian to talk about some of the things he's been working on.
Cool. Yes. So here we have Rapid and MapRoulette, the unstoppable team. So this is exciting. What we're constantly, making new releases of Rapid. And if you go to like the next slide, I guess we'll talk about the MapRoulette feature a little bit. The MapRoulette feature really came together within the past year, so it's kind of new. This is fun. It was actually one of those things where we had an intern kind of get it started, and then we were able to just kind of improve and improve. And then in version 2.3, released in May, it included this new feature. So if you're not familiar with MapRoulette, it's a site it's called like microtasking, where it collects different tasks for people to work on. The tasks are grouped into challenges. And an example challenge might be something like review missing crossings around Atlanta, Georgia. So Meta has been, detecting places where they think that crossings might be, or where they think the crossing might be mistagged or maybe not tagged correctly. And these things pop up as tasks on MapRoulette. And you can just kind of go through the tasks and kind of review all of the whatever the issue might be. And then at the very end, it says the user could do some mapping, and then they can either click I fixed it, or there's some other buttons for, this isn't really an issue, or, I can't, there's no imagery I can't really see well enough so they would like skip the task. You go to the next slide, I guess. I put a little screenshot here of what it looks like, but what I'm actually going to do is kind of like a live demo, just because it's probably easier to show than to explain. Let's see if Chad can give me some control here.
Yeah, let's see.
We'll see how this works.
Let's see.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's letting me do it now. Here we go. Will you guys see what I'm seeing? The screen?
Yes.
This is okay. This is Atlanta, Georgia. I picked this place just because I know that there are MapRoulette tasks around here. It's part of I think this is one of the different walkabout cities that we could, do later as a group. Sorry, I'm just gonna move this is one of those funny things when my Zoom window is covering up the thing I need. So down here we have a button called Map Data. This lets you show the layers that Rapid is showing. Obviously, there's a whole lot right here because we're a little bit zoomed out. But I'm going to add this MapRoulette task layer. And you see these green map markers will pop up. And each one of these is the Atlanta machine learning crossing detection. Another cool feature is if you're really just working on one particular task, you could even put it into this filter for the challenge ID, 43341. I'm gonna even try that, 43341. Yeah, it's all the same ones that you see here, but I don't know. I mean, if you have an area that just has covered in green markers, that can be useful to kind of just show the ones you're interested in. Let me close this screen here, and we can actually zoom in on some of these just to see what's going on. Zoom in here. You can see I'm going to pick one, and it says there's a big long description here. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the TLDR is just that we detected a place where we think that there's a crossing. It says it looks like there may be a crossing at this location, but there's no crossing feature mapped. And you can see what they did here is somebody just drew this sidewalk. It just goes the whole way. Like it's not actually broken up into where the crossing is. And so we could provide some additional detail, which makes the crossing better mapped. And so the way I would accomplish this is I would put a break there. We're going to zoom in even more. I'll put a break there. And if you've used ID, then you know this stuff really well, or if you've used Rapid, there we split those so that now this is its own way. And then see, it's still tagged sidewalk. So we're going to change that. We can see from the stripes on the ground that it is, I think it's called like ladder or double ladder or something. Paired ladder. That's the name of this one. And so one cool thing about Rapid is we have little icons for all the different types. There's skewed ladder, paired ladder. Like if you type crossing, you'll see all of them. There's all these different kinds of crossings all around the world. In this case, we've got a paired ladder. So we'll pick that one. And another nice thing is that when you switch the way to paired ladder, it automatically tags the node to match. So it saves you a little bit of time. If you've done a lot of crosswalk mapping, you know that you're supposed to kind of keep the tags consistent between the way and then the node. Rapid will do a lot of that for you, so just make it really easy. Make it straight. And then because we fixed this one, I'm going to say I fixed it. There's an optional comment that you can put here if you wanted to say something else. You don't necessarily have to. But then, it's marked as being fixed on MapRoulette because I clicked I fixed. Oh, I have to click submit. Sorry, I forgot that part. Click submit. I think it went. I'll go and save. Update crossing markings around Atlanta. You can save your change just like you're used to. And then there you have it. I'm just gonna shout out one other quick feature. If you're mapping like a street grid, it can be kind of nice to like rotate the map a little bit. So, Rapid lets you do this so that you're not like just kind of like turning your neck. So that can be useful too. If you hold down Control and drag around, it'll rotate the map. If you use shift and arrow buttons, you can rotate it. So it works kind of like if you've used MapLibra or Mapbox or Google or any of these other maps. That can also make sidewalk and crossing mapping a lot easier. And then you can click this button just to put it back north. I think that was pretty much all I had. I think I've probably been talking for at least 5 minutes. So we could, just kind of move on, I guess. What do you think, Chad?
Yeah, either leave the rest of the demo to me or street
We're-
level imagery. I can
Oh,
show.
yeah. You know what? Let me start. I forgot to mention that, but we can also go into the same place here. We have both Bing and Mapillary and Cardiview. I happen to know that there is Mapillary here, so that if you ever wanted to just take a look at, what it looks like on the ground, there's that paired ladder. Some of these are 3D and you can drag them around. Actually, the Bing ones are. So if I turn on Bing, pick this bubble that's here. Sometimes the Bing imagery is a little older, but we'll see.
It's 2022.
Actually,
Bad.
yeah, 2022 is not too bad. You can also resize this a little bit and get this thing out of the way. You could put this high resolution. Sometimes that helps. it does make it a little bit slower to load, but if you really just want to get a good view, this is cool too because you could see oh sorry, the tactile paving here and here. So chat, is that a thing? I guess we could add that, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's where the higher tiers, the
mhm,
gold and platinum tiers go. If we do want to get all those details, the first thing
yeah.
you do, Brian, is add the curve points.
Hmm.
And
And
then you
so I guess I could give a quick little shout out that, we are always kind of adding features to Rapid to try to make this a little easier. We got one coming out next month, which might make it where it just helps you add the curve points and tag them a certain way. Um, but I think right now what most people would do is something like this, lowered curve, tactile, and click up here and do the same thing. Oh, I have it. Um, so there, you could add that little bit of detail if you're feeling like you want to, if you're here, you're looking at it, you might as well add it. Like it probably helps somebody. Um, I don't know if you, another thing you could do too is you could shift click on things and you could just add them all at once. That's can be a real time saver too.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
Yeah, you're welcome. So you want
The
me to stop sharing and what do you
Yeah,
want to do?
I think so. We're about halfway through. Got 30 minutes
Okay.
left, so we could spend this time mapping. Drew asked a question if there was a way to request machine learning sidewalk extraction from newly collected Mapillary data. Um, and I asked for which city. Uh, I could give you a definite yes if it's a specific city. Drew, maybe I'll just allow you to talk here if you wanted to ask that question.
Hello. Yeah, great. Thanks. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Very good. Yeah. Appreciate you all leading this meeting. I was just curious if all Mapillary data was automatically analyzed. Chris, I know that you've been doing some of this kind of not as a widespread analysis. But yeah, if we did collect a significant amount, I was requesting specifically for Morgantown, West Virginia, in which I collected Mapillary for all of our roads earlier this year, and I'm looking at Rapid, and I don't see generally any of those things that you're showing in terms of for our area.
Hey Drew,
Chris.
yeah, it's funny, I think it was last week I actually just added Morgantown to the list that we're slowly expanding of cities that we generate this data for. So
Awesome.
we started really with like, very core lists like DC,
Right.
Miami, LA. Yeah, now I'm at about 150 I'm testing it on, so I think I can't tell you exactly when, but there's some process where it should roll out. So we'll keep an eye on it. I can't say when exactly.
Great. Of course. Thank you so much.
And the coverage is awesome there, so that helped moving into the list. That was great.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. It's really good data. Um, Another source that we use is the machine learning outputs, which come from aerial imagery. So they'll take, 3-inch imagery, look for crosswalks. If we can detect one in some specific percentage of confidence, then we put it in MapRoulette to assist humans in, improving the consistency and coverage.
Yeah. So is there a way to, we were able to successfully get our 4 to 6 inch imagery um, in Morgantown as the default background for ID. And so we were able to update our license language every year for our aerial imagery that we collect for it to be used for tracing. Is there anything that you all would need other than that for us to say, hand it over to you for that analysis? Or other than maybe being a larger city?
Yeah, we should definitely talk offline about this, Drew. There's a number of moving variables there that we'd need to kind of iron out. But yeah, if you have some good open data, there's a possibility that we could work with it. But I don't want to say yes or no here without digging in more, which we can do. You have my email, I'm pretty sure. All right. So we're going to move on to a couple of these mapping projects. So in your browser, I believe we should be using the Chrome browser, Brian, with Rapid Editor. That's
Yeah,
still
Chrome tends to work best. Safari and Firefox should work okay too.
okay.
Yeah, or Edge, I think. They'll all the modern browsers work, but Chrome is the one I use.
Edge is a modern.
Edge. Edge
Um,
is it's a fork of Chrome now. So yeah.
okay. So yeah, we have 4 projects: Phoenix, Arizona, Norfolk, Virginia, Washington, or Atlanta, Georgia. If any of those places resonate with you, take note of which project number that is. If none of them resonate with you, maybe start in Atlanta because the data there probably has the least coverage. So this is the OpenStreetMap US Tasking Manager. If you've never used it before, it's just a way to create projects for certain places of the world. You can give instructions there. I'll kind of show you how it works. Click Explore Projects. A bunch come up from all over the world. These are the 4, again, that we're interested in. I am going to map Atlanta, so I'll type 708 into the project search, and then it comes up right here. Boom. I'm going to open that project. Gives you some instructions, a little bit of background. I will walk through all of that with you. It's always good to read the instructions when you're starting these projects. That tells you how whoever created that project would like the data to look. So it just gives you some guidance. It's helpful, makes consistent data throughout a city rather than just showing up and mapping things differently. There's a lot of different ways to map this. I'm not going to get into them all now because we won't have any time left for mapping. So oh yeah, you need to be logged in with your OpenStreetMap account. I'm sorry, that's a small detail I possibly overlooked. That's what happens when you've been doing something for so long. It's just some of those small details get past you. Log in. And this is the project area for Atlanta. You can click this Map a Task button, but what I recommend is for everyone to select a task area that is close to, well, it's either on the edge, working across, on the top, working down. What you kind of want to try and avoid is just like clicking some arbitrary place in the middle and then having someone else click an arbitrary place, because then you get this patchwork of mapping and it's not great. It takes longer to map. The data doesn't come out as good. So it's nice to systematically work across an area. Maybe something like a big highway. You could start mapping on one side of a highway or one side of a river. Those are good geographic barriers that kind of break up pedestrian data. So there's less going on from, when you're actually building a network of things that are completed in all directions. So I'll just, I'll select this one right here. Click Map Selected Task. It comes up, that grid area that's outlined by the blue box. The tasking manager was designed to have a lot of people mapping simultaneously. So you really don't want to map outside of this blue box when you do have multiple people mapping, because you could have conflicting edits. You will run into conflicting edits. So this button up here at the top kind of hides the side panel and displays it. When I'm mapping, I like to have it hidden. And then, the background settings are here. Brian showed some of these. You can change the underlying imagery layer. There's the Esri Wayback. You can adjust these dates, for some of the other options that are available on the Esri server. Some of these are a little redundant, but they're all in here. The
Yeah, we
world's
think that so we think that the most recent date corresponds to Esri world imagery, and we think that the oldest date corresponds to Esri clarity. But then all the dates in the middle are things where Esri thinks that the thing you're looking at might have some change involved in it.
okay. Thanks,
Yeah.
Brian. Usually I default to Bing. I don't know why. It's generally the best everywhere in the world. But the Esri stuff is getting better. Okay. So then, what do? You zoom in here. We're building complete networks, routable networks. So you want every feature you add to be connected to some other transportation feature. Ideally, a footpath, a sidewalk, but roads, alleyways, those do count as well. So just going in here, you see this sidewalk comes down. See, this imagery is not great. Oh, where is this going? This is where you might want to load your, say Bing imagery. There it goes. It's really hard to see this path because of the trees. But you can, in fact, tell that it's there. Yeah, that's a nice one. It's even got a fence. Look at that. Goes all the way down to the corner. Point lines area. There's also, this is number one on your keyboard, 2 and 3, the hotkeys. Click number 2. Just kind of like follow this trail along. Obviously, it's very hard to get this spot on where that sidewalk is. However, this is probably that'll work it right there. Okay. Once you get the line added, go up, click on sidewalk, or you can type sidewalk, and then it turns that into a sidewalk. If you happen to know other things about the sidewalk and you feel like adding them, surface type, the name, sidewalks usually don't have names, the width, if it goes over, under, through, any of those other details. We generally just keep them to the basics of footway equals sidewalk, highway equals footway. All right. And then you can see I kind of went just outside of my little grid. Maybe like technically I should probably stop it right there. Okay, so that is my one sidewalk that's been mapped. I think we have some hotkeys coming to make it easier to turn off the street level imagery, and those are on the next rapid release, and that's happening when, Brian?
In about a month, we think, December sometime. But yeah, we're adding hotkeys to show and hide the different street view layers.
Just in time for the holidays.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, just kind of like look through your little grid. This is really tough because of all the tall buildings. Looks like there's some features that go through here. There's a road that goes through here. The other thing that you want to take note of is how the roadway is tagged. There's two different ways. Well, if you're adding separate sidewalk geometry like we're doing here, you need to click on the roadway, see if it has a sidewalk tag, which this one doesn't, and then add one that says sidewalk equals separate. That means that the sidewalk along that roadway is mapped as a separate feature. If you're, and so this is getting into that tiered schema. This is like the silver, gold, platinum mapping. There is a way to only tag roadways with sidewalk equals right, or sidewalk equals left, or sidewalk equals both, which is how you can actually route pedestrians along roadways. But we're trying to add an extra level of detail to those maps and add them as separate features off to the side. it's a lot better for routing for multiple purposes, but there is a lot more detail that goes into it. Look at this one. This is okay. That's out of my square. I won't worry about it. So yeah, this is probably a good place where you want to turn on some other imagery layers to see if
Yeah. Hey, Chad, another thing I forgot to mention when I was talking is we do have a validator in Rapid that will pick up on a lot of kind of like sidewalk and crossing issues. So you could also open that up and just see if there's if it flagged anything, like if the tags could use an update or if there's an inconsistency between like the way and the point.
the validator.
Yeah, it's above there, the little diamond, yeah, that thing. If you click on that, okay, it's warning you about some bus routes, which that's not important. But I noticed as I was doing the task and scrolling around, it was giving me some warnings about the crossings that were in my little task box, and so I was able to do some upgrades here to kind of improve their tagging.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I do. A lot of times you do see the bus routes or things that are irrelevant to what we're doing.
Yeah,
That's something else to note with the MapRoulette challenges as well. They are not all related to building pedestrian data. Sometimes you'll see stuff like, well, we're mapping solar panels or whatever it is.
yeah,
But here you can see, look, it's detecting this crosswalk that's missing. It's detecting this crosswalk that's missing. It's detecting this one that's missing. So it's actually doing its job with some pretty decent um, returns there. And so, yeah, I always just like to kind of look in at that intersection, see what's going on. All right, look this way. Sidewalk comes down, goes around the bend, keeps going that way. There's lots of undetected crosswalks. Well, that's where we're at right here. Just gonna keep mapping this sidewalk. You know, in this case, I guess you can kind of look back to see, hey, did someone select that? Where is it? The one next to me? No.
no. I tried to pick a corner all the way on the other side.
Okay.
I'm one of those other little locks.
So you can see if no one's mapping right next to you. Okay, I'm just gonna like temporarily cheat and then bring this here, just for consistency's sake. And is the person who's doing the mapping, that's something that you need to take into consideration, leaving little slivers or not. Yep. Okay, I can delete that and just drag this sidewalk over, and then we're getting to the crosswalk. And this is where some of the newest, the next release of Rapid is going to have a whole slew of tools that make this process a lot faster and more fun. There's a crosswalk. It's a zebra. It's a ladder. What is that one? That's a ladder one. It's asking you to connect these features. So it will drop. Rapid is smart enough to know when a sidewalk or a crosswalk is crossing an actual road. And then it says, hey, we want to drop a crossing point where that road crosses, where that crosswalk and road intersect. That's important to have for the roadway, so cars know that there's a crosswalk there. It's also important for the pedestrians to know that there's a road there. And it also will just automatically takes those tags from the crossing way and adds them to the node. Gosh, these trees, could I have picked an area with more trees? No. On we go. There's 2 crosswalks there.
Yeah.
So there is another cool feature here. You select those, I can add curbs. You can copy and paste, and I do it a bunch. Here we go.
Yeah, just move them around.
Take some all.
Exactly.
At the sidewalk. I feel like Bob Ross.
I do too. It's very,
A happy little sidewalk.
yeah.
Okay. And then I'm mapping blind here below this beautiful fall foliage. All right. Does anyone have any questions? I should be monitoring the chat here.
Yeah, I haven't really seen anybody talking in the chat. I wonder if the chat is
All right. I apologize.
locked down.
I'm having too much fun mapping and I'm not answering questions. So let me roll through these.
Oh, yeah,
What is the difference between this tasking manager and HOT? That's a great question.
yeah.
Well, generally, I'll answer that question at a very high level. HOT was the original organization that created the tasking manager as open source software, and then a variety of organizations have forked their version and kind of maintain their own on the side. HOT, OpenStreetMap US, we have one, Rapid. A lot of private companies have them. The list goes on and on, local OpenStreetMap communities. So for the most part, they should look in functions similarly. There might be like a versioning here or there, a little function that's not exact. But there shouldn't be big differences anyway. Okay, next question. What is your view on streets without pedestrian infrastructure but are really well used by pedestrians, either out of necessity or because there is only slow-moving local car traffic? How should we denote this? So you're talking about like a residential road that doesn't have sidewalks, but people walk on all day long because like out of necessity or whatever. This is where you would tag the roadway. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find an example here, but let's just use this little thingamajig.
Could be a living street also is an interesting tag for that. I don't know if many people use it.
Yeah. So I've heard Living Street is kind of discouraged in the United States because it actually is like a special like legal kind of class of street that's found more in Europe than here. Living Street, I think the legal definition is that the pedestrians have priority over the cars. So you could actually just run out into the street and the cars really just have to stop for you. And that's one of those things that I don't think, I mean, even in Europe, there are special signs that say like, hey, you're entering one of these zones, drive carefully. We don't really do that here. We probably should. But so there are people out there in the OSM community that feel that you should only be using Living Street if it's one of those specific situations.
Okay. Yeah, don't overcomplicate this. Living streets. Jeez. But going back to the original question of like, how do we map it? You could just go in here. You could, how would you do that? Would you tag it as, shoot. Would you tag it as sidewalk equals both? This is what you would do. This is what you would do. You would make sure that the road tag is like not like a highway or freeway or something like that, which it's probably not. It's like an alleyway, or this is tagged as a parking aisle, right? And so if you make sure that the sidewalk you're mapping is connected to the parking aisle as a whole transportation network, then whichever algorithm or routing algorithm you're using, you can set the variables on there to say, hey, look, it's safe to walk on a residential street, or it's safe to walk on a parking aisle. You can use that in your routing results. And that's how it will take the data that's already there, which is why you really want to connect all your pedestrian features to existing road networks with that little point. It's important for multiple reasons. Hopefully that answered your question. We've got 5 minutes left, and so I'm going to keep trying to go through these questions. Hector was asking about a date selector with the Mapillary tool, which he says he found. This is so Mapillary data. I don't know if this is going to be a great showcase for it, but yeah, you can see there's multiple tracks here. We'll go up to an area where there's a lot more. Which one's the most recent? The ones with the little halo around it, like this, means 360 imagery. I like those, but you are able to set some date queries here at the
Yeah, it's a
bottom.
filter. Yeah.
At some point in the near future, I do think that we'll be able to have some criteria for selecting the best imagery and just surfacing that as your default layer, whether that means the most recent or maybe 360 or whichever camera that is being used. But Brian would probably know more about that than I.
Yeah, I have no news to share.
Okay.
But we do like the feedback. I mean, because we can kind of take it to the Mapillary, the product folks, and see if that's not something their API gives us now, we could ask for that.
Yeah, that's a great, definitely a great feature that I feel like the user interface, we could make it a little bit more friendly. So thanks for that, Hector. And then James says, is there a walkabout pedestrian working group preferred tagging for multi-use paths along a road? There are a lot of options on the wiki and forums. Tagging multi-use paths along a road. So you're talking about like a mixed use pedestrian bike path type of thing. Yes, he probably. I don't have a definite answer for that. You know, the one thing I can say is that these things vary state by state, city by city. Pedestrian multimodal use, the rules, what you can drive on and what you can't. You know, can you bring an e-bike? Can you only walk? There's a lot of variables that go into it. I think that's probably why you see so many options on the wiki, is just because it's not a binary decision of either this or that. So
Yeah, I guess
probably
just
look around and see how others have mapped similar features in
Mhm.
that area, and then maybe stick with something like that. There's also a great OSMUS has a great and active Slack channel and group, so you can ask questions there, and people source it from the crowd. Brian.
Yeah, I was just gonna say too. I mean, at least for when I'm doing tasks like this, I just stick to what I can see from, the aerial imagery and the street level imagery. Because there's always gonna be stuff that, you really need to be there in person to kind of know, like, oh, is it okay to do some of this other stuff? So I feel like a thing that people don't realize is like all of this is sort of optional. So you just map it up to the level that you feel comfortable doing, and you don't necessarily have to capture every detail about a place. Um, we get questions like this sometimes in the Discord or in the Slack where people will be like, "What's this concrete square?" And I'm just like, I don't know. I mean, if you don't know what it is, like you don't have to map it really, like so. That's my advice. It's just
Yeah,
if you see a zebra or a ladder or whatever the crossing looks like, you can map that. But if you can't really see in good details what the curbs look like or whatever, you could leave that for another day. It's like,
all right, one last question here. This is an important one. How are ramps or infrastructure for people with disabilities considered? So there are some, ADA compliant infrastructure, pedestrian infrastructure guidance or guidelines out there that municipalities are required to meet. we're hoping that with mapping in data at the detail that we are, that we can help and assist with some of that. That's, not our specialties, but we do have a couple people on the pedestrian working group that do have experience with what those regulations are, and they're helping us set the guidance appropriately. What you can do, like at this point, if there is a curb ramp added, and you bring up your street level imagery and you look at what that curb, you can see Brian was demonstrating this earlier. That is a lowered curb. It looks like it's flush. There's no tactile surface. I don't know if that's ADA compliant or not. I would say no, because it doesn't have the tactile surface. But
Mhm. Yeah, and I think we've also seen cases too where people, they collect this data and then they use it to kind of advocate for their local, their government to kind of improve the situation. So sometimes mapping this, it can be a very local thing where you just get, I'm just like, I know, for example, in the town where I live, there was like a Boy Scout troop that just went around and was just like saying, hey, like we need to have better, I think it was like curb ramps or something. They went out and just looked at them all. And, I found out about this project later, and I would have loved to be like, hey, you could actually use OSM, to collaborate. Like there's tools and then, it benefits more people. But they went out with like, paper and pencil and stuff. But it's one of those things where like you could get a lot of people involved, and it could be a real, I guess, it's just a real motivator to improve your situation.
yeah, if you are interested in doing some local projects in the places you live, reach out to Chris, Brian, or I. We can get you set up with one of these tasking manager projects, get you linked in with the local community. Real quick, because we are over time. Just want to show you what when you save, it's going to put a bunch of change set comments in here. These are preloaded. You can keep them. If there's anything specific you want to add about the mapping you did, you can add it here. It will flag some warnings for you. It'll say, hey, this is, close to here, but it's not connected. I'm going to add a crosswalk there. So I'm going to say, ignore this issue for now. Then you have to go back and save. And you click upload, it pushes it back to the OpenStreetMap database. If in fact you have mapped that complete area, you can say, yes, this area is completely mapped. If you want to take a break and go get a coffee, you click no, you can come back to it later. That will free up that task for other people to use. So yeah, I'm going to stop sharing. Thank everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
Daniel, I see a hand up. I'm sorry, Daniel. Did you have a quick question?
I think you have to permit talking.
Oh, geez, I'm sorry.
Hmm.
And now you're muted, but I permitted you to talk. Sorry, that sounds. Ask to unmute.
We could do more of these. I feel like this is
Sorry,
fun.
I
There we go.
mistake.
No problem. Oh, and the hand was up by mistake.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for joining. Yeah, maybe we'll do more of these. If not, those projects will be there for a while. And when they're done, we'll have more on there. Reach out to us if you want to learn more. We're not hard people to find. And happy Geography Week again. Happy mapping.
Bye.
Goodbye.